Okay, this is Paul, and he's been doing real estate for 17 months. He does not invest in Midland, Odessa at all. All of his are out of town investing. He was in the Army for 8 years.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, what else here? He rides a Harley? Yeah, you can't be all that, you know? So,
it's true.
And he used to break dance in high school. He was? Break dance. Okay, so maybe at the end of this,
No, I was about 60 pounds lighter and way more flexible, so unfortunately I can't bust out the moves. But hopefully I can give you something with more value outside of that. Yeah. So first off, I want to thank you guys for coming. I really enjoy speaking. I haven't ever done a talk on real estate before, and I'll tell you, I really enjoy it. I've actively been investing for 17 months, but just like I'm sure all of you, there was maybe 3 or 4 months of learning and reading books before that.
only 3 or 4 months? Great.
Oh, but for me and my personality, I got so itchy to want to do something. And you could ask my wife, I'd be sitting in bed and just wanting to say, I have to do a deal. I mean, I've read 3 books. They all kind of say the same thing. But if it's that simple, we should just go do one, right? So I'll kind of go through that journey a little bit, just so that you guys kind of know where I'm coming from. So this is going to be the topic for today, how to invest remotely. And when I say remotely, it is very remote. When I evaluate a property, honestly, I don't even really look at any of the properties that I buy. I have people that look at them for me. If I'm that interested and trying to maybe gauge their trust, I'll do a Skype date with them so that the agent or whoever's on the ground will go through a webcam and I'll look at it from my bedroom or something. So with that, I just want to get you guys in mind that that's how as I go through this, keep that in mind, that I don't ever look at anything. The cities that I invest in, I've never visited before. So some call me crazy, some call me risky. But hey, you know what? At the end of the day, it makes me feel alive. So I do it anyway, right? So here's some references. These are probably my top 5 books right now. As you can see, there's only one real estate book there, which is The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. And honestly, he is one of my favorite authors, which you can see his other book, The One Thing, is also on there. And then going through 10X Rule, Grant Cardone. If he's not number 2, he is like 1.5. Because Grant Cardone, if no one knows him, check him out. He will completely change the way you guys think about not only investing, but also lifestyle and setting goals and things like that. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Again, it's a leadership book, but it talks about leadership from within. Not how to actually lead other people, but it kind of makes you ask your questions, why are you actually in the position you're in? And then finally, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Negotiating book, probably the best negotiating book out there. He spent 20 years with the FBI Special Negotiations Team. Goes through stories and techniques of how he was speaking with terrorists in the Philippines, how he was talking through bank robbers in New York, and some of the ways how human beings make decisions. Right? So, not to go too in depth, but I really like this book, but it kind of goes through how human beings are so emotional, and you can go say A plus B equals C all the time. And I'm sure you guys know car dealers probably do that all the time, and yet you still don't buy the car, right? They have to figure out what is making you go through with it. What's the emotion behind what you're doing? What's the real motivation? And that book goes through it. And I mean, my wife just started reading it, and she's like, all this time you've been doing this to me, you know, and it is such...
I've read it 3 times already.
So it's an awesome book. So I encourage, if you guys don't read books now, please start. I'll tell you, I read about 50 books a year. Harley's one of my coworkers over there, and he knows I'm always talking about the new book I'm reading and how much time I spend on it, and I just love it to enrich your mind and really make you think of different ideas and stuff like that. So again, so here's my disclaimer, right? So I'm going to talk about finances, getting loans, some tax ways to do things. So I'm not an expert at any of this. Again, I've only been doing this for a few months, right? So everything I'm giving you is my opinion and what I've done, and I'm not here to tell you this is how to do it, right? So I'm just here to share what I've done and hopefully give you guys ideas if you're thinking about investing remotely. I'm also not one of those people who'll tell you, let's all do this so we can retire and vacation for 30 years, right? Because I'm an engineer and I love my job as an engineer. So I don't really think of myself as wanting to quit that and go to the beach for the rest of my life. I feel that human beings are natural creators, and if I'm not creating something of value to people, I don't really feel fulfilled. And that's just something that I've learned about myself. And I'll share some stories with some of my rentals and some of my flips that I've done on how I'm fulfilling that need for myself. So it might be a little selfish, but other people are kind of benefiting from it, at least the way I feel it is. So, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. All right, so the way I started, right? So I followed the crowd. I went to college, got a degree in electrical engineering. And as I was growing up, there's only two things I wanted to do. I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I wanted to be in the Army. So as soon as I graduated college, I went to the Army. Realized that was a terrible decision. Like the first day I was on active duty, I was like, there's no way I can do this for 20 years. So I served my time, and I got out, and I immediately got a job as an electrical engineer. And I was like, you know what? I love this. This is actually, that whole idea of creating something totally fit with what I do on a day-to-day basis now. And then I kind of followed the other part where hopefully I can retire comfortably by the time I'm 60, 65, and I don't know, if other things keep going, maybe 70, right? So, and then after that I die, right? So this is the one that really got me, right? So between going to college and getting a job in retirement, all this space in between here was still meant to be written. So I had to figure out what I was going to do to hopefully die fulfilled. Another great book, 5 Regrets of the Dying. Read that. No one ever says in that book that I wish I spent more time at work.
What's
right? 5 Regrets of the Dying. Again, and then the one thing by Gary Keller, he says that in life you're always juggling five things. You're juggling 5 balls, if you will. Your family, your work, your social life, your health, and your financial health. And of all those 4 things, all those things are made of glass except for your job. Your job is made of rubber. So if you drop your family, you drop your financial health, you drop your physical health, you drop your social health, those things are hard to repair. You can repair a glass ball and put it back together, but it's not quite the same. You drop your job, guess what? You can go find another job, right? And probably pays better with better people, and you're happier, right? So you never know. So the fact that most people spend their time working and sacrificing those other things. So again, I had to figure out for myself what was the things that I wanted to do to change that. Then, as all you know, 2014, the price of oil dropped. I mean, crazy, and it still haven't really fully recovered back to $100 a barrel. So I kind of made my own decision, like I told you, and I started first with Dave Ramsey. Anyone know Dave Ramsey? Yeah. Okay, so my wife and I were gazelle intense, right? We paid off all of our debt except for the house, and it was an awesome moment in our lives. And then immediately after doing that, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Which was so out of the blue, right? I mean, just went against everything. Yeah, exactly. So as you can see, started with the get out of debt strategy and then moved to the use debt to leverage assets, right? And then through that process of learning, learning what the banking system is, and everyone write this down, it's called the fractional reserve banking system. All but like 3 countries in the world use this, which is like North Korea, Sudan, and I think, I can't even remember the other one, but 3 countries, every other country in the world uses the fractional reserve.
The fractional reserve banking system.
Banking system. So look it up, and I'll give you a quick rundown of it. So essentially, when you give your money to the bank, let's say you give $100 and you deposit your money in the bank legally can take $99 of your 100 and lend it to someone else, right? So if you look, there's like FDIC, so everything's technically federally insured, but all of your money that you're deposited is not really there. It's just a bunch of digits, right? So when I learned that, I was like, you know what, when it stays in there, not only is it losing money to inflation, but the bank is using it for people to buy cars, to buy boats, to buy houses. But then I thought to myself, why can't I use that to go buy real estate? I mean, Robert Kiyosaki talked about it, but I never really understood that. He always said that the rich use debt and taxes to build wealth. And until I started this journey down real estate, I didn't understand that. And real estate not only hits the real estate part, but it hits the tax part so much. I mean, regardless of where your income level is, to have that many deductions by running a business and by all the depreciation you can put on it. I mean, just come into this, all the mileage from Midland to Odessa, and then the office in our house, the badass computer I bought to run my business, all that goes against my income. So when they say, you know, pay yourself first, don't pay taxes first, I never understood that until I started running my real estate like a business. Because the first time I did it, I ran it like, oh, I just need to buy something, right? So I closed under my name, and anyway, we'll get to that. So one of my mentors, his name is Glenn Estrabilio. He's the CEO of 1+12 out of Toronto, Canada. He kind of introduced me to this 3 ways of investing in real estate. So the 3 tenets of it is produce, protect, perpetuate. The production part, you know, I won't go through it because a lot of books kind of go over how to produce wealth. But essentially the optimal, suboptimal, and gross miscalculation. So the optimal piece is your capital. After you throw it into an asset, you need to be able to get it back, right? So think of it, if you have a down payment on a house, let's say you take a year, you take your down payment, you put it in the house. Now that down payment is stuck there, right? But what if you can do something to where the down payment, you can pull it out after you buy the asset. The appreciation of the house stays there, but now you get cash flow from rentals, or if you're flipping it, right? Because what's the use of saving, let's say, $10,000 to buy a house, but now that $10,000 is stuck. It's no longer working for you, right? So that's your optimal solution. And then your suboptimal solution is a portion of your capital has to stay with the asset. So if you put $10,000 in, you can only take $10,000 back out. And then gross miscalculation is essentially a flop, right? So the numbers and all the analysis you didn't quite work out based on the market trends that you were following. But you stay away from that as much as possible, but it's part of the learning curve, right? So if you ever do that and you mess up, just do it again differently, right? Don't let that discourage you. The protection piece. So whenever you're producing return on investment, how do you protect your capital? How do you protect your ROI? And then how do you protect your asset? So some of the things that I've heard in this meeting before is LLCs. So that's protection of asset. Protection of capital, again, is a way for you to get it back out. A typical example of that is a refinance, right? So you put it in, you add value to the property, then refi. In the state of Texas, I think they allow you to do 80% loan of value. So that 80% has to include your capital. And always have the bank ready to do that, right? So that's a big piece. Protecting your ROI, that for me has come in the form of what's my bottom line number, right? So if the market says I can rent this house for $800, but my numbers work for $500 or $400, do I still make an ROI? And if I do, then to me that's my way of protecting myself, is getting and buying things as low as possible. And then finally, the perpetuate your wealth, right? So my wife and I were thinking about having kids one day, and how can we take that wealth that we're building now and pass it on multi-generationally? And how can we do it in a tax-deferred way? And I'll tell you right now, the best way that I've found so far is through the use of trust funds. Or trust, sorry, not trust funds, trust. If you put an asset into a trust, whether it's I think it's simple or complex, you can take that and so there's a beneficiary, a grantor, and a trustee. And if the beneficiary, let's say you put your grandchild on there, that asset can move multi-generationally, tax deferred, until 21 years after your grandchild dies. So you don't pay tax on it, your kids don't pay tax on it, and your grandchild doesn't pay tax on it. Now your great-grandchild, hopefully they're good to go, right? Because they're going to get hit with that. But, you know, if you talk to your accountant, there's ways around that. And then, granted, we're in the state of Texas, so if, let's say, you have a will. If you have a will in any state, that will goes to probate. What that means, it has to go to court first. And the court can then look at that and say, you know what? There's some taxes on this that you owe. So whoever you're passing on your assets to have to pay that tax right then and there. Now in the state of Texas, it goes straight to a lawyer. It doesn't go to court. But in Oklahoma or anything like that, it goes straight to a court. And the court can say not all of this is passing through. And then I think the magic cutoff number is $5.5 million. Anything like $5.5 million or less, you can pass on tax-free. Anything more than that is when they start taxing the will. But again, with a trust, you don't have to worry about that. Just think of that, 21 years after the death of the last remaining survivor on the will, on the trust. That's how, when you hear about how Donald Trump does it, or how all these other people can do it, or trust fund babies, it's just so amazing. And normal people like us, unless we're out looking for that information, it's just not brought to you. Like, you never thought of that until you do it. But for each house I buy now, it all goes into a trust. Right? And not only does that trust do the tax, but it also protects me. Right? So, but again, go to your accountants and your attorneys for more specific information on that. That's just a general outline. So with all those things in mind as I'm buying things and how I'm protecting them, again, it's never happened to me. I've never been sued or anything. I have done evictions, which is awesome because I never go to court for them. But with everything else for that, it's, definitely think of these things as you're evaluating and buying your properties. So this is probably the key to my success right here, is when I started, I decided to build a team, not a portfolio. So wherever I go, I'm always talking to people, whether it's through Bigger Pockets or cold calling people and talking to them about what I want to do. And what's helped me the most is I always try and sell what I'm thinking about doing with the property. Because most people, when they hear that, they kind of get behind what I'm doing. So for example, in Indianapolis, I buy houses in one of the nicer school districts, which is Lawrence Township. And what I do is I try to buy a house there real cheap, fix it up, and then I rent it out about, I would say 5 to 10% below market value. And my target renter is single parents. And when single parents, who can't afford to live in a good school district, and they see that they can rent that, it automatically gets them motivated. And then when I talk to banks, when I talk to agents, when I talk to my team, and I tell them I'm trying to do this. And what inspired me was learning about Ben Carson. I think Harley, you were telling me about how he grew up. His parents made him read books all the time, and little did he know his mom was illiterate. Then they were able to kind of go into a good school district, and then now he is what he is, right? He attributes that to his mom being able to work out of that situation. So when I talk to people and I tell them, here's what I want to do, all of a sudden they can get behind that, right? So I get certain deals. I don't get all of them, but I get good deals, like one of the ones I have under contract now. 3 beds, 1.5 bath. It's a short sale. Maybe needs $10,000 worth of work, but I'm buying it for $30,000, right? $30,000, I put maybe $10,000, $15,000 into it. I rent it for $750 to $800. Those numbers work all day, right? But why can I rent it for that when the market says I can rent it for $900? Well, because I'm doing this. And when people hear that, now don't get me wrong, I don't do it for all of them. probably about 40% of my rentals in Indy are geared towards that. But you need some capital to keep the rest of your charity going, right? So by taking care of myself, I can take care of other people. And so that's really the first part of that, is tell people why you're investing in real estate, and really challenge yourself that it's not just to make money, right? So in El Paso, I bought houses from the Department of Agriculture. Most houses sell for $100,000, $110,000. I got them all for $50,000 and below. And I put maybe $5,000, $7,000 into them. And my target there is veterans, because I was in the military. One house I have under contract that's going to sell next month, the offer was $103,000. I countered offered for $98,000. And of course he accepted it, right? I'm saving him $5,000. Why? Because when I saw it was a VA loan and it was going towards a veteran, I want to have an impact there. So what did I do? I forego $5,000 worth of profit to help someone out. And so when I was building my team there, I actually got really lucky. There's a brother and sister team. They flip houses. Very knowledgeable. They've done like 10 houses already, but they don't have the funds to keep it going. And I told them, well, honestly, I don't know anything about fixing houses. I can't even change my light bulb, But if you guys want to work together, I'm very good on the financing side. And so they're like, if you can do it, let's do it, right? And so in their minds, they told me, they're like, well, we weren't expecting to hear from you 6 months. I called them in a week and I told them I had 2 houses under contract. And I was like, when can you guys get to work? So another part of building a team is don't expect yourself to trust them. Get them to trust you first. When they trust you and you can kind of work out the deal to where, I can't pay them a regular salary to go do this stuff, but I split the equity of the profits with them. So one of the things people say, oh, well, contractors will totally screw you all the time. They'll run away with your money. They won't run away with your money if 50% of the profits are going to them. And you guys just saw the numbers on that deal, right? $62,000, it's on contract for $98,000. Imagine you're going to screw me for $15,000, all to make another $2,000. I don't think that's going to happen, right? So again, get them to trust you. Don't try to make them earn your trust. If you're both working at it together, I think you can build a very good team. And you'll go through a bunch of them, right? I've tried this in Dallas before. It didn't work out with me because the guy wanted way more than I wanted to give up. And his schedules were all crazy. So I never did in Dallas, I only own rentals. I haven't done any flips. So yeah, again, so keep your word again. So when I said, let's do a deal, I mean, throw that at someone with a week and they see how committed you are. Everyone wants to work with you. You know what I mean? Okay, so here's another piece, and I overheard your conversation earlier, about how your mindset is. So a lot of people have this inherent belief that investing in real estate is risky. And then on top of that, investing out of town in cities you've never visited becomes even more risky. So here are just some things that are what I feel are just common objections. If you guys feel like, does anyone have any real fear of going out of state or going out of town? He's like, yo, let's do it right now. But I hear it all the time, especially from family and friends, like, oh man, when you go do this with the property manager, they're not going to pay you, or you never know if they're going to be just letting your property go to crap while you're thinking it's cash flowing, and then when they try to put it up for rent, how do you even know they're doing that, right? So all of these things, I would say don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution to everything that you're doing, right? Because if your goal is to get 500 units this year, right, and you're in let's say you're here in Midland, Odessa, well, can you realistically do it just in your area? I mean, I will never say no, but wouldn't it be easier if instead of trying to invest in just Midland, Odessa, you're trying to invest all over the country?
Sorry to interrupt, just I was just informed by the managers that we had to keep this open. Good
Okay.
fire code.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so again, with the 10x thinking of Grant Cardone, reading that book, my goal was to buy 5 units last year. and I couldn't really hit anything. It was May. My wife and I went to the Philippines to go to my brother's graduation, and I only did one deal, which was a resort in Belize. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get to 5 if I don't do something differently, right? So I was like, that's it. I came back from the Philippines. I was doing research while I was on the plane. I started making phone calls to banks, wholesalers, agents in Indianapolis. And then all of a sudden, I got a property owner contract within a week. It was a 3-plex. And then we closed in a month. And all of a sudden, I had my one deal in Belize and then 3 units. So I was like, all right, that's 4, and I was like, well, what else are we going to do? What else? And I ended up buying some more properties in Indiana, and I totally blew my goal of 5 away. I bought 10 last year, right? And I was like, well, I need some bigger thinking, right? So this year our goal is to hit 20. And how do we do that? Well, the whole house flipping thing in El Paso came up in December, right? And my wife's like, well, you kind of know El Paso. I was like, but I don't really know anyone. And so I leveraged my business partners there to help me. She introduced me to real estate developers, banks, and whatnot. And we bought 3 in a week, So we didn't close on all of them until January. But essentially to keep the crews busy, we buy 1 while the crew works on it. Then they move to the next one, and then they move to the next one. And a lot of these are 4 to 6 week turnaround times. So the holding cost for us is really low. We use hard money lending for that, and we get 100% financing. So the other piece of that too is I'm without any of my own money in any of these deals. I mean, my friends ask me all the time, how are you scaling this so aggressively? Well, the big piece is I have money in the bank, and then when I invest, I don't use any of my own money, right? So I'm leveraging the whole fractional reserve system, right? Because I'm making 300% on a house, I'll give up 10% on a loan. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm making 290% on 0, which is really like infinite. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I love real estate. Right? Okay, so I go through some potential solutions. I already talked to you guys about that. Okay, so here's kind of some things that I did. So anyone know what Bigger Pockets is? Okay, so I use Bigger Pockets. Anytime I'm trying to move into a market, I go there first. And then after that, always search REO agents, right? Because when banks, are in pre-foreclosure on a house, commercial property, anything on their books, they have these mortgages that are listed as assets and liabilities. And then right in the middle, they have this thing called a non-performing asset. Right? And at least for me, my sweet spot is that non-performing asset. Because once it's a liability, it goes on the MLS, and the whole world can buy these foreclosures and whatnot. But right in the middle, they can take a haircut as long as that haircut is close enough to their break even. Right? So like, for example, the houses in El Paso, they were 44,000 about, and I bought them for like 46. Another one was like 49. I bought it for 50. So they're willing to shave off some of the profits to get it out of their books and put it back into the performing asset liability or performing asset column. So REO agents are your friends, and then if you can get around them, go straight to the asset managers. The asset managers for banks are hands down going to give you the best deals. I don't even go on the MLS. My first deal in Indiana, I bought on the MLS. But ever since then, I haven't used the MLS at all because that's sweet spot. And the more money you have, the more they will send you stuff, but I'm not big enough yet, so I'm not the first guy they call. But you know what, if I'm somewhere in there and they're calling me and sending me deals, and then the part where I told you guys earlier, when you share your story and they can get behind your story, they don't give me 50 houses at a time, but if they give me one of those 50 and I can afford to do it, man, I'll do them all day. And I'm sure anyone here wouldn't mind getting a 1,200 square foot house for $30,000. You know what I mean? So here's some interview questions that I have. And in order to set a baseline for when I'm dealing with people. I ask the same questions over and over and over again. Because if I ask the same questions, not only do I know if they have something in place for it, but I gain a comfort level by knowing that I'm doing the same thing over it. And then it becomes less of an interview and more of a conversation, right? So after you do this a couple times, I mean, every other Friday I don't have to go to work, so I have a day off. I spend that whole day making phone calls. I'll call 60 to 70 people in one day. A lot of them are banks, and a lot of them are agents, right? And honestly, it's less banks now, more agents, because I need more deals coming my way, right? So one of the things that when I first started, I thought money would be my problem. And what I ended up learning was money is only a piece of the puzzle. It's not really the big piece. They're all equal, right? So now that I know how to do, how I've done a few deals without any of my own money, the other piece is how can I get more deals coming my way so I'm not sitting on any capital. I can have more of my capital deployed to make some friends and come back, right? So again, by doing something like this, by asking questions, the same questions over and over again, I can establish a baseline. And then after that, you guys are probably going to hate this answer, but there's something your intuition tells you that whoever I'm talking to is either a really good salesperson or they know what they're talking about, right? And I've been blessed that they've known what they're talking about and they're really good at what they do. So for example, one of the brokers that I work with in Indianapolis, he is the head of the Brokers Association of the state of Indiana. So when I saw that, I was like, well, if this guy starts to screw me, he's got a big reputation that he has to now back up to the rest of the state, right? So his peers voted him in because of, how many deals he's done, how many people trust him, and how, all kinds of things, right? So if he does a bad deal or does something that's unethical, being at the top of the pyramid, he can fall pretty hard. So in my mind, that guy has a lot to lose by being unethical in his practice. And he runs all of my portfolio in Indiana. So I'm okay with that guy, right? Because if he falls and I fall, we're all falling pretty hard. And at least he's going down with you. I'm not by myself, right? So, property and project managers. So in El Paso, I don't actually own any rentals. All I do is flip there. So here are some things that I ask them when it comes to property and project management. The big piece that I need to know is how to flip houses, right? You don't need to know the money part. We can figure that out. And honestly, that's one of my strengths, and that's what I bring to the table with my partners. Is I know how to work with banks, and when I'm getting 110% financing on a flip, I already have built-in contingency with that. So it helps me out quite a bit. Maintenance requests. So one of the cool things is how they leverage technology. So I'll tell you, my property manager every quarter visits the properties in Indiana. They take pictures of them. It has a GPS stamp. It has a time stamp. And so it's not like, well, I'm going to take their picture every July and I'm just going to upload it every July. Like there's actually a time stamp and a GPS stamp. And another part too is you can pay, I think $100. They'll do a full HD virtual tour of my property. But I don't need all that. I mean, all I care about is that they're visiting the property and taking pictures of it. Another piece is how they screen their tenants. I've never dealt with a tenant before. I don't know anything about screening tenants. Harley has tried to teach me a little bit of that, and I was like, just not interested in that knowledge coming into my brain, right? So I asked them. They had probably the most, so I use IPM, Indianapolis Property Management Company, and they probably had the most extensive screening process. Not only do they do background checks on felonies, credit score, verify income, evictions, and things like that, but they talk to their employers, make sure that they're actually employed there. Some people are like, oh, well, they bring their pay stubs in, and that's how we verify they're employed. Well, these guys actually call their employers. So I thought that was, one extra step that they did versus all the other property managers. So I like that. Another thing that they do is they're a turnkey company, which I don't buy turnkey real estate because there's no value add to it. But what tells me with that is part of their business model is the property management piece, right? So they start losing clients if their property management stinks. So because as part of their turnkey solution, I was like, I prefer giving my properties to a turnkey because not only do they have to put a tenant in there now and manage that property so they have scale, but all their clients are depending on them for that. So they have those systems in place, that you and I were talking about earlier, Lee. So anyway, if there's any other questions on this or if you guys have anything to add, please do. And I'll tell you, property managers are awesome. I mean, my mom used to tell me, oh, you're going to have to deal with broken water heaters and this and that. I never deal with any of that. I get a check on the 9th of every month. Even the evictions, I think I had to pay $100 for them to go to court. The tenant didn't even show up to court, so I didn't have to pay for anything of that. And then after that, they just cleaned up the unit and are now marketing that particular one. Never had to deal with it. Another one, I had the health department of the county sent me some citations because the tenant upstairs was doing like all kinds of spring cleaning and bought new furniture and took all of their stuff and threw it on the curb. So the county sent me a notice. I called them up, scanned it, or I didn't even call them, I scanned it and I emailed it to them, and they took care of it. Like 6, maybe 2 months later, I got a call, hey, we dropped all the fines, you don't have to pay for anything, blah, blah, blah. All because all you had to do was call the garbage people to go pick it up, right? And then there's some other things, but I won't bore you with tenant stories. General contractors, I think I talked to you guys about this before. So the way I handle this is my project manager or my property manager in Indianapolis manages all the renovations that I'm doing there. And what I do is I give them a 10% markup on whatever the quote I get from the contractor. So again, with 10% of whatever the quote was, so for a $10,000 renovation that I'm quoted now for one of the properties I have under contract, they're going to make $1,000, and all they have to do is show up once a week to verify that. And then when I'm not even doing draws from a bank, but all they do is they show up, right, and they make $1,000. So it's in their best interest too to go do that. And then this property is in Lawrence Township, so it's going to be going to a single parent. So now they're even more motivated because they're like, hey, we actually have a bunch of these. Ever since you started doing that, there's people calling us because they tell their friends, right? So as soon as it's fixed up, I have almost a guaranteed renter, right? Because one, it's below market value, and then at the other piece, I'm trying to do a service. So even the people that they're using as marketers are saying, you know what, that's awesome. And then they work a little bit harder for you because it's for a good cause, right? All of a sudden people are motivated. And I don't know, there's some fulfillment, a lot of fulfillment that I get with that. And really real estate has helped me find that. So, and one thing you'll see at the bottom of every slide is this piece right here. Make a decision and take action. Right? Because there's plenty of people out there who are learning. And with anything that you want to do, take the time to learn it, but then there's nothing like learning by doing. Right? You can take something like, let's take for example medieval times, Picasso. He had to go to, he had to be an apprentice somewhere. And he had to learn how to do it. Then he became like Picasso. And an interesting fact about Picasso is he has over 10,000 art pieces. Right? That's more than any other person of his time. So why is he so famous? Well, probably because he had 10,000 and he jacked up a whole bunch of them, and then people started finding stuff that he likes, right? Mozart has over, I think, 5,000 compositions, musical compositions, and he died at 35. Right? So, again, if you look at the 10x rule, you can mess up all those times, but if one or two things hit, all of a sudden you're a hero, right? So it's just another book. Sorry, it's called The Achievement Habit by Bernard. So he is a teacher at the Stanford Design School, and he says that the achievement habit is all about taking action when you don't really have all the information, right? So I'm the type of person, I need 20% of the information, and I can make a decision and then fix it all along the way. And a big part of it is I have a team, because, man, my accountant hates me, because my first year, I did not keep track of anything that I was spending or anything that I was making. And I was like, yeah, it's all right here, kind of, aren't you an accountant? You're supposed to account for everything, right? He's like, yeah, if you want to pay me $300 an hour. I was like, no, I don't want to pay you $300 an hour. So he kind of yelled at me, and then I was also commingling funds. So I was using my personal funds to do all my business stuff, which, common sense, right? But I just didn't want to go to Chase and start a business checking account. And so I was like, I'm too busy doing deals, right? So I got yelled at my accountant this year again for that. But he said, at least you learned your lesson, and your expenses and profits look much better this year. So I learned something, right? So anyway, but taking action, just going out and doing it, I think will just by default, you'll be successful. You don't have to learn. In fact, Grant Cardone, his first deal was a house, and then after that he bought a 28-unit apartment building. Never read a book, never talked to anyone. He just had it in his mind that I want to buy real estate. All right, so just go out there and see what works, right? Fix it, move forward, and just keep making mistakes, break stuff along the way. You can fix everything, right? Nothing is, you can bounce back from everything. And next, property evaluation. So this piece, I put it up here, but with 18 months, I can't really say I know exactly how I'm evaluating these properties, because right now, if they're cash flowing, I feel like I've done good, right? And then 2 houses in El Paso are on the same block. One of them had a contract before it even sold. The other one is still on the MLS. And the first one sold for 98. The second one, I have it listed at 96. And I still don't even have an offer. So I don't really know why. So I can't really speak much to this, but they're on the same block. They have the same address. And one sold before it even was done. So I couldn't tell you guys on that. But the numbers, honestly, so like I said, in Texas, 80% loan to value is what they'll do. And the appraisers will always mess with you. So always find appraisers that work with banks. Or find the bank, or find the appraiser that works with your bank. Because when they know you're working with that bank, they will give you the best market value of your property. If you're just looking for an appraiser, they will do their normal sheet of what are the comps, what was built, then some pictures, and then it's so opinion based. And it's frustrating for me because the 3-plex I own in Indiana, I bought for $60,000. It rents for $1,600 a month when it's 100%. And duplexes and triplexes in the area are showing comps of 200, 225. My loan's only 50, right? So I was like, oh, let me have it reappraised, refi, pull it out, and go buy an apartment complex. They only gave me an appraisal of $80,000. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? So, and every time you do that, it's like $800, especially for a multi-unit property. So I started talking to some people, and they're like, look, who's your bank? I use Nations Direct. They're not local. So again, I always work with local banks with that. And now I have one up there, so it's this next project is who I'm going to be using. But always always do that because the appraisal is hinges so much on that. And then if you're hoping to protect your capital, that appraisal has so much to do with protecting your capital. Because if you can't refi it for what you're expecting, because I'm trying to refi for 50% of what I thought it was of 200, right? So I could have paid off the 50,000 and taken 50,000 to go buy a bigger deal. But the appraisal kind of messed with me. I'm going to wait 6 months, let things kind of happen, and then do it again, right? Because if, like I said, the comps show it. And for threeplexes, they always look at the rental, like what the rental income is. And the fact that it's 1,600, anyway, it's a learning process, but something that you guys can take away from.
Have you signed for any of your loan notes personally, or all?
The first one I did.
Non-recourse or?
Huh?
Are they non-recourse?
Yes, they are non-recourse. Except for the first one. Yep, but everything, and that's the best part, right? Because I don't have to put any of my own stuff. Yep, exactly. In fact, now, if a bank allows people to close under their own name, I don't even work with them. Because in my mind, that's not investor friendly. Right? So I always look for the ones that require you to close under an entity. But that's my own criteria. You guys, if you're starting, just find one, right? And just start doing it. Yeah. I think. So, what's the next slide? Let's see. Property evaluation. Oh, okay. So these are just some books. So, Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So, just some comments about this because I love books, right? I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and here are the 4 steps they say how to become a millionaire real estate investor. Think like a millionaire, buy a million, own a million, earn a million. The hardest part right now for me is to think like a millionaire because your objections in your mind are always going to keep you from taking action, right? And the buy a million, I've only been doing this for 17 months, and I'll tell you, I'm only about 100,000 short of this, right? And then owning a million after you're having your net worth, okay, that's probably the next major step, but again, it's in the, like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the last piece is earn a million a year, which if you break it down, it's $83,000 a month, which honestly at $83,000 a month, I'll probably still be working my job, but these are the 4 steps, right? And he goes through it. And the hardest piece is thinking like a millionaire because the hardest piece is getting in your own head that what you're doing is right, So I struggle with that all the time. They think they call it analysis. That, and I fall into that sometimes. In fact, I would say over the last few months, it was hard for me because I thought I was moving too fast. And then I kind of slapped myself in the face and I was like, what are you doing? So I'm trying to get more aggressive again at it. But another one of my mentors, he always says that as you elevate your wealth, you have to elevate your character. If you don't elevate your character, you can lose everything that you've worked hard to earn. Because they say that money is an amplification of your personality. So if you're an a-hole, money's going to make you a bigger a-hole. If you're a generous person, caring and trying to do things, be charitable. If you listen to Dave Ramsey, you listen to Robert Kiyosaki, they all talk about philanthropy, giving back when you attain, right? So to me, that is a huge piece of it. In another book, Top 10 Distinctions Between Millionaires and the Middle Class, he talks about how the middle class always say, when I'm wealthy, that's when I'll give. When millionaires know, give all the time, regardless of where you are financially.
Then you
you won't give when you have it, right? And so the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, Allah, they have ways of making sure that you're going to, if you're screwing everybody or you're being unethical, you'll come back around and it'll get you, right? So always be mindful of that. And so the thinking like a millionaire piece, even now, is something that you can take action on right now to start changing, your life. That might be too far. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the one thing, that question comes up in that book all the time, right? So what's the one thing you could do right now that if you do it, everything else doesn't matter? So for me, if it's, and you got to break it down, and he goes from 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day. So what's one thing you can do tomorrow that if you do it, nothing else matters? Sometimes for me, it's making a phone call to a bank that I'm worried about, or calling the property manager and asking them how the marketing is going for one of the empty units. But if you do something like that every day, every week, every year, every 5 years, it gives you intense focus on what your goals are. So I don't know about you guys, but I write my goals down every day. My book is in my truck right now. Every day I write down what I want to accomplish, and I also give myself a success quote. One of my favorite ones that I wrote today was, why do Lamborghinis not have TV commercials? Because the people that can afford them don't spend their time watching TV. All right, so again, awesome book, especially on when it comes to focus. And it may not be real estate, but this is a real estate investment club, right? So we'll talk about real estate. But I don't care if you're in mutual funds, stocks, if you're a day trader, if you flip businesses or own a business yourself, selling whatever, right? As long as you have intense focus on growing that and attaining your goals, not to say you won't ever have setbacks, but it keeps you from spending so much time on Facebook, so much time on sitcoms and stuff like that. So that book, Gary Keller, he wrote 2 books on my list. So awesome person. He has a podcast too, which is the One Thing podcast. Definitely check it out. 10X Rule, Grant Cardone, man. He is one of my favorite mentors. He has an awesome personality. He is awesome. So his big quote in his book is, make success your duty, obligation, and responsibility. And one of the best parts about his book is he says that when I'm attaining success, it makes me a better father. It makes me a better husband. Because part of his success is being a good father and being a good husband. So by taking all that and making it part of what he considers a success, he makes it his duty and obligation and responsibility to be all of those things. And he says, whatever you think it takes to be that success, make it 10 times larger, right? So if you're thinking right now, I want to be a millionaire, too small thinking, right? You need to 10x that. Make it 10 million. Make it 100 million. In fact, just make it $1 billion, right? Because if you're trying to become a billionaire, the actions you're going to take, the risk you're going to take, the investments you're going to take are going to be so big and so massive that becoming a millionaire or a decamillionaire is just, you're going to hit that pretty easily if your goal is to be a millionaire. There's another quote, if you aim for the moon, because if you miss, you'll only end up in the stars, right? So always dream big. And I had that problem for a long time, and I still do. Like, man, that just sounds so scary. But if you're not scared, you're not dreaming big, right? So I challenge everyone, just forget everything and just everyone should be billionaires. In like 10 years, we should all go to Hawaii or something and talk. Exactly. Well, no, we'll be working, right? Because honestly, one of my perfect days is to close on a house on a beach, right? Get all of the stuff sent to my email, because I close now from a laptop. Why can't I do it on the beach, right? I'm not on vacation. I'm working here, you know. And then the last piece, or one of the other pieces he says is, everyone talks about don't be the Don't be the hare, be the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race. And he's like, no, it doesn't. Why do I have to be one or the other? Why can't I be Smokey? Where I'm this weird animal that is as fast as the hare, but underhand stands and the focus of the tortoise. So don't be one or the other, be both. Always try to empower your mindset. Don't try to make compromises on your goals. Always try to do big. So I just always want to end with this. And I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel pretty soon, and my sign-off is going to be stay hungry, that's why I'm just starting it, right? I had this idea last week, but it's stay hungry, stay motivated, and be generous. That's going to be my sign-off. So that's one thing I want to encourage you guys, all right? Stay hungry on what you want to accomplish. Stay motivated on it. Don't let things discourage you. And on your way to that, be generous, all right? Give back, because honestly, I really feel that a big part of my success is that I'm helping people along the way. So find your why, find it, and just go for it, all right? So,
I'd like to challenge you to be part of the Jimmy Napier Millionaire Club.
okay.
He wants to start a patriotic
what?
club
Okay.
that pays $1 million in a year in taxes.
Wow. In taxes?
So your millionaire club's a little short than his.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool club.
Absolutely. $1 million in taxes. So what's 15% of that? So that way we know what that is.
He's got a good idea.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So if you guys have any questions about, the things I'm doing, how I'm doing them out of state, I'll be more than happy to. Right now, the only markets I'm in is Dallas, El Paso, and Indianapolis. I can't really comment on other ones, but those are the ones I'm focused on right now. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I have my business cards are floating around. I have copies of the presentation, so if anyone wants it, definitely feel free. Yes, sir?
Why are you still focusing on single family or duplexes, etc.? Why not 20, 50 units directly?
Okay, so actually, right now those are the deals that I have, but one of my goals this year is to actually help my in-laws buy a 30-unit apartment complex.
Why not you? Why not?
Oh, well, so one of the other things that I do is right now with my in-laws, they have the money, so I'm going to focus my attention on that. But for myself, I'm looking at apartment complexes now.
That's completely right. There's no point doing single family.
Yeah.
Always just, my first deal was 100 units.
Oh, we need to talk to that. You should be here.
That was his first deal.
Yeah.
You can leverage, you can do whatever, right? Easily you can, you already know how to use the money.
Yes, sir.
Why not?
100 units. So do you mind talking about that? Like where was it?
Oh, it's in Florida, Jacksonville.
Oh, nice. Jacksonville.
Oh yeah, I live in Austin. So investing out of state, right? I don't care.
Yes, sir.
I can work from anywhere. I can go and do whatever I need to do to make it work.
Yes, sir.
So I run an IT company, information technology. So for me, all my team is spread out everywhere. Here, different countries, so it doesn't matter. Everybody's remote. So it works. So for me, it's okay. Let's go and buy the best deal that you can.
Yes, sir.
With whatever the money you have or what you can get.
Can raise, yeah.
And again, first deal I syndicated.
Oh, okay.
Well, with solely family and friends, but yes.
Yeah, and probably because of the SEC laws, or did you?
I mean, it's not necessary, but
It helped.
I just needed to close the deal, and I could not use the money that I had somewhere.
Yes. Okay.
Why not you guys?
And I guess that's probably the other piece, because we're partnering on it, so my money's going in with that too. But that's 100 units.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I mean, honestly, think about that, right? I mean, 100 units.
Oh yeah.
That should be your goal for the year.
2 years ago, and I think I was trying to keep for 4 years, then sell it, but I'm going to be selling mostly in the next 3 to 6 months time frame, and we did all the value add, at least $1 million profit.
That's awesome.
So that's what we should be doing, right?
Yeah.
No point. No. Yeah. That's like, I mean, we all need to try and do the thing that makes sense, and then sometimes like a lot of these guys say, right? I mean, Grant Cardone says, and then this guy, Navik's one of something like that.
Mark Cuban. Yeah, Mark Cuban.
There's no point trying to really, one of the things that there's no point diversifying or doing
Yes.
so many things. Go all in if you can.
Yeah.
If you really believe in yourself, if you figure out a strategy or where you wanted to focus on, then do it.
Yeah, he said that there's no point in diversifying. He's like, put all your eggs in one basket and protect that basket and figure out where that basket's going to go. So
That's one of the things. So, but basically, you got to do what you got to do to make it work.
Absolutely.
I have smaller other deals, but my second deal is 200 plus units in Midland. So
Nice. One of you could be renting from it.
that's kind of thing that we can do.
Yeah.
It's not all our money, right? I mean, of course, we got to put some money of ours. But you can raise, like, what do you do?
Yeah, no, syndicating is what I'm learning right now. Have you heard of Michael Blanc?
Yes.
So he's a big syndicator.
For apartment buildings and raising.
And syndicating it, yeah. So
So is Rod Cleef.
I don't know Ryan Cleef.
Rod Cleef. Michael Blanc, Blank, B-L-A-N-K.
Yeah.
Michael, that's it, Blanc.
Yeah, I think he's French or something weirdo.
From the New York area.
Oh, is he? Yeah. But no, I mean, that's awesome. And I think with what you're saying, you know, and I mentioned it, the thinking big, I struggle with that all the time, you know, and that's even when you're saying that now, because for me, the 30-unit deal I'm looking at now in San Antonio is scary, right? But 100 is like, well, if you can do 30, you just add a couple more zeros, right? Yeah, so,
10x, right?
yeah.
You're saying 30, why not 300?
Why not 300? Yeah, no, you're right. Eat my own Kool-Aid or drink my own Kool-Aid. But make it Jello too, right? But no, that's awesome, and yeah, I mean, does anyone else do stuff out of state or not locally? I guess.
I've got some stuff in Abilene, but it's
Okay.
family stuff
Yeah.
that I fell into. But I'm also working on syndications, and I'm looking at 20 and 30 unit properties, but I'm also looking at it as smaller deals,
Okay.
because I'm looking to get into 100 unit deals and even on up. So I will do, like I was saying earlier, I will do some quads and stuff like that. Just depends on what falls in my lap and what
Yeah.
I'm going into. But I'm not focusing on single family as much as I'm focusing on, you know, the multi-family, the bigger units.
Yes, sir.
Because I think you can build well faster with multi-family, with more units.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
going to say like roof.
Same amount of work as you do the resident.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what I'm learning on the commercial side? Commercial is a godsend when it comes to lending.
Right.
It is so much easier. Oh yeah, I mean so easy.
When you run into your problems, like raising money isn't exactly easy.
Uh-huh.
Finding the deals aren't exactly.
Yep.
I mean, you can
Yep.
analyze,
What the heck, if you can.
right, you know, you can analyze a bunch of deals, and half of them may fall through completely. I mean, they turn to crap in your hand. So, yeah, it's not easy.
No, and I'll tell you, so for me, what got me into apartments, I was looking at doing a deal in Chicago for disabled veterans up there who were looking for work. And so again, doing the same process, calling banks, calling brokers, telling them I found a broker that really wanted to work with me. And then what ended up happening, so what I learned from that is I didn't get the deal. Someone outbid me on it. But so when I say commercial loans are godsend, they don't look at any of your real assets, I guess, only the business. They only care about the property. So if you can show, here's the, and they look at pro forma, right? So their lending criteria is less conservative than yours. Right. Because you're looking at it, what if I can only rent each unit for $800? Well, they're looking at it pro forma, oh, well, it should rent for $1,100 each. So all of a sudden, they'll lend you way more than what you want to do a deal. I mean, commercial is yeah. I mean, I haven't done one yet, but what I learned through that process was definitely eye-opening. And even all of my single-family houses are all commercial loans now. I don't do any mortgages because of that reason. And if you can show I'm only going to take 70% of the value, they'll do 100% financing. Because they only care about the income. They don't really care about anything else. And then after that, you've got to show some liquidity just so that they know they can come after the business. But I don't keep any money in my business account, so I show the minimum balance that's required. But I don't know. It's commercial is, you have to shop around, and that's why I'll call 60 banks in one day just to find one that does the terms that I want.
When you're calling those banks, are you looking for someone in that state, or are you just looking?
Yes. First I'll go with a state, and I go with different banks now, and then after that I'll look at brokers. Okay. But brokers are probably calling the same people I'm calling. Yeah. So but sometimes they'll save you time because they know, and then they're working for a commission. They're not looking to close something right away. So I guess it just depends. In El Paso, I'm fortunate enough to know a big real estate developer there who not only develops like big housing developments and apartment complexes and commercial, but he also does lending to specific clients. So he's been lending to my business partners there for a long time, and so by default, because I have a good relationship, and he's the one that does 110% financing for me. Yeah. And he knows, I mean, I truly believe he sets market rents in El Paso because he's got thousands of single family, but he also he owns like every commercial building, I think. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but he pretty much does. And then he also owns a bunch in Europe and Honduras, and so he's always just traveling around. And UTEP, which is University of Texas El Paso, gave him like some big award last year for investing in the city. In fact, the big baseball stadium that they built out there, he helped fund it. I mean, he's just that big of a, yeah, so when I got in with that guy, I was like, well, and he likes Johnny Walker Blue, so that's another piece of networking. Gift your way referrals. I mean, go to Sam's or something and buy a box of wine, like cheap wine, and then just hand that to clients or people that help you along the way. Not only will they fully appreciate it, but they will help give you referrals. So I gift my way to network. For guys like him, big cigars, so I have a box of cigars that I just keep, and I always bring it to them. But anyway, that's just some other techniques on how to build, like how to work with people, because if you guys have heard, real estate is a people business, not really a property business. The more people.
Okay, when you were first starting out.
Yes, sir.
Did you set out to learn as much terminology as you could so you didn't sound like an amateur?
No.
Or did you just let them know, I'm now just starting out and not me type of thing, conversation, or what?
So let's just go the more fresh one.
Because of the answers that you gave back to their questions, they
can tell whether or not you're
Correct. So,
seasoned or not.
so with this commercial deal, I'll go through it because it was hilarious. All right, so I called the guy and I was like, I want to buy this apartment. He's like, okay, do you have financing? No. Well, it's something cap rate. I think he was marketing it at like 18% cap rate.
What?
And I was like, what's a cap rate? And he's like, oh, well, it's this. And he's like, did you ever buy anything before? He's like, no. He's like, so what made you want to buy this? And I was like, because I want to buy these for homeless veterans or disabled veterans. He's like, all right. And he ended up mentoring me through the whole process because he was an Air Force veteran. And so when he found out what I was doing, even now, he still teaches me how, like what they said, terminology, the purpose of an LOI. I didn't know what an LOI was. The purchase agreement. He even introduced me to some banks that will, in Chicago, that will fund 65% of the purchase, 100% of the rehab, and then you have to find the other 45%, whether you get it from a bank or you get it from, you raise it yourself. But the point is you have to be in certain areas that they deemed, hey, these are areas that need affordable housing. And he introduced me to the Chicago Housing Authority lender, I guess. So from that, and I've been trying to do a deal in Chicago too for that because I'm like, well, now I have a network there and never been to Chicago, But honestly, the big piece I always do is I just call. If they don't want to work with me, okay, there's somebody out there who will, Terminology, as you do go through it, I think you just learn it, and people end up trusting you more after that. But honestly, what's worked for me is telling my story, is telling them, here's why I'm doing that. And it's not purely for profit, it's for other things too. Profit comes along the way, So yeah, it's honestly just, I don't know if it'll work all the time, right? But I spoke to another veteran and who knew I wanted to help veterans. And all of a sudden, he became a mentor of mine. His name is Rich Wozni. And his assistant calls me more than he does, but that's okay. And she's Filipino, so we automatically but anyway, so yeah, I think Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, read that book and use a lot of those. And then that Chris Voss book, Never Split the Difference. It just teaches you how to work with people. And that has helped me more than learning any real estate strategy or terminology along the way. So just because I feel like I just know how to talk to people, I guess. I don't know. Maybe, especially over the phone. They have to feel your enthusiasm, I guess. And it's just been, I don't know, it's been a fun experience for me. I get a rush when I call people out of the blue. So maybe that's why the Philippines has all this telecenters, because they all like to talk over the phone, right? So, anyway. But yeah, thanks for coming. If there's no more questions, I don't want to be standing up here. Thank you, guys.